Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the panel discussion on heat, health, and hard truths, the consequence of living in a warming world. My name is Carmen Farino. I'm a senior advisor with Kite Insights. And with me today are Salman Albadullah, EVP for ESG and Sustainability at EGA, Antonio De Sica, COO at Tabreed, Kathy Bauman-McLeod, CEO of Climate Resilience for All, and Liz Henderson from Aon, and she is the Global Head of Climate Risk and Analytics. So welcome to the panel. I would like to ask each of you to just explain a little bit about your organization, because not everyone may know every single one of us. So Salman, why don't you tell me a little bit about EGA?
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. And Emirates Global Aluminium have its roots in Dubai Aluminium, which was established in 1979. We are a primary aluminium producer, and we make one of the highest quality of products and purpose-built and alloys as our customer requires. More recently, we are the first organization in the world who were able to convert the power from the sun through Mohammed bin Rashid Park into making metal. And one of the first customers was a highly prestigious BMW. And today we are also suppliers of the first tier, top tier suppliers to organizations like Mercedes, Nissan, and Tesla.
Wow.
So if you're driving any of those automobiles, the chances are it's made in UAE metal in there. We have a lot of initiatives on decarbonization, but also on social and governance issues, some of which we will be talking under heat stress related cases. We are one of the largest value-added product providers in primary aluminium.
Oh, wonderful. That's fascinating. Antonio, how about you?
Well, thank you for inviting me to this interesting panel with my distinguished guests. Tabreed is the world's largest district cooling operator, present here in UAE, in the Masdar city in Abu Dhabi. It's one of the Mubadala companies. And we have a regional presence in all GCC and recently also Egypt and India. So as you see, all growing markets where cooling has an important role to play against global warming. And our purpose is to deliver sustainable cooling to our customers. We serve landmark and iconic buildings. Here we are in Dubai, so if you go in Dubai downtown, Burj Khalifa, Dubai Opera, Dubai Mall, we are supplying cooling to all the Dubai downtown district. Also Sheikh Zayed Mosque in Abu Dhabi, Louvre Museum, Dubai Metro, etc., etc.
So people may not know your company, but they certainly feel the impact you have.
They should. And if you are not happy, come to see me.
Kathy, how about you? Tell me a little bit more about the Climate Resilience for All.
I'm very delighted to be here. Thank you. Climate Resilience for All is an organization formed specifically to address the many aspects of extreme heat to vulnerable communities while achieving gender equity. And so through a gender lens, we look at addressing extreme heat. And that big fact that not everybody knows is that women are disproportionately impacted by extreme heat. And extreme heat is killing more people than any other climate hazard. And 61,000 Europeans died summer before last. Europeans, 61,000. 1,200 people died within 2 days in the United States and in British Columbia. The death toll is high, it's quiet, and it's invisible, and people don't understand the full impact of it. And culturally and physiologically, women are disproportionately impacted. And so that means their income is impacted, and that hurts all of us. And so you may have noticed I'm wearing a t-shirt that says, when women are climate resilient, we will all be climate resilient. And so our organization is focused on several aspects of addressing extreme heat through physical interventions like cool roofs and green roofs and design and policies that dictate what people wear when they go to work and when they work. And then specifically financial solutions. And I'm very excited to have our partner here from Quendo Core, Miriam Bibi. And we will be launching a micro-insurance that triggers when the temperature is too hot to work outside for heat-exposed women, and they will get paid to not work, so it doesn't harm their health, and that lets them take care of their families and extend their life. There's more to the program than that, but I know it's just an introduction. But I'm delighted to be here and be here with my colleagues. Thank you for the invitation.
No, that was wonderful. It's fascinating. And I think you're going to see in this panel, as Liz introduces her organization, that there's a lot of overlaps. If you were to do a Venn diagram, you'd see that virtually everyone here has an impact and a relationship to the other. And that's actually going to be a big part of the theme of this talk. So Liz, tell us a little bit about Aon.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me here. And that's a great introduction, Kathy, because I work for Aon, which is the world's largest insurance and reinsurance brokerage. And what we're doing, well, many of you may not know of Aon, the corporation, but all of you have purchased or have had to purchase insurance at some point in your life. And so one of the things that I do at Aon in my role is to think about how do insurance companies look at risk. We have really detailed data around heat impacts, catastrophe impacts, climate impacts across property, health, and other outcomes that we're using every day to make decisions about how do we price insurance products, how do we place risk transfer solutions for our clients. And as we think about climate change, how that is impacting the environment in which we operate every day, as well as the investment needed around transition and new technology to help combat the impacts of climate change, insurance is the oil in that equation to help move things forward. You have to have risk-taking entities as partners, and there are risk transfer solutions to help increase resilience. And so I'm really excited about this panel today to talk specifically about heat and health and how insurance companies and our clients at Aon are thinking about how that will affect their employees, their talent strategies, and their risk transfer strategies. So thank you.
Liz, maybe we should use like silicone or lubricant.
I said oil. Sorry.
I think that it's fascinating that we've already started to talk about this idea of risk and resilience. And so there's a lot of discussion here at COP28 around this, the ability now to think more holistically about risk management and the idea of resilience. So I'm going to start with Antonio. Your organization has this ability to impact so many different people. And with a population migration of roughly 1 billion expected over the next couple of decades that will be moving into an urban environment, how important is it to really look at not just the individual and how they're impacted, but how communities are impacted when they come together?
This is totally true, and science demonstrated that average temperatures have increased. This is a fact. We have data. We have seen the average temperature going much over the 2 degrees we were discussing in the Paris Agreement, and the 1.5 degrees that we are discussing now.
Yeah.
And especially here in Middle East, which is already a hot region, we are suffering with seeing more and more hot period lasting longer and longer. And as you said, population are migrating towards cities, and urbanization is something that we are observing in most of the developing countries. If you think about India or other big developing countries, we have seen a lot of urbanization, which means that cooling it's not something luxury. It's not just for comfort. It's a need. It's a real need for health, safety, and for helping our communities, resilience of our cities. So this is where we feel we play an important role to help communities, to help our district and cities to grow, because we still see this environment growing.
Sure.
So, but in a more sustainable way. And what is our knowledge that we can apply and we can contribute with in this context. Basically, we think about solutions that can be sustainable, integrating renewable energies,
Yes.
and also boosting energy efficiency. We have seen here yesterday a pledge for doubling energy efficiency efforts by 2050 to reach net zero and to keep the temperature increase below 1.5.
Yeah.
So this is exactly what we are aiming for, to encourage master developers, policymakers, local authorities, governments, to increase the use of efficient solutions.
Sure.
We have the technology. We are part of the solution. District cooling is done for energy efficiency, because I just want to remind everyone, district cooling is up to 50% more efficient than your conventional system split units, air-cooled units standalone that you can have in your buildings or in your apartments. So it's a mindset change also how we design our buildings.
Yeah.
Buildings is around 40% global final energy consumption worldwide.
Yeah.
And if we look at here, 80% of our electricity in UAE, it's just for buildings.
Yeah.
And half of it, and even more, it's just cooling. In summer, we reach around 70% peak electricity demand because of cooling.
Yeah.
So we understand that there is the need for a global solution
Yep.
that can contribute to reduce this stress and can be also financially viable and make the return on investment of investors.
Yeah,
because this is also true.
I mean, it's interesting when you look at this panel that in many ways, each one of them has a purpose and a mandate that overlaps with the other. So when you listen to this idea of how to deal with extreme heat, if only we had an organization who deals with extreme heat on a daily basis, who is trying to understand how human behavior adapts to extreme heat. And actually we do. So I would like, Salman, for you to talk about how EGA approaches this in their manufacturing, but more importantly, how you can extrapolate from that and take lessons from that that can impact the rest of the world.
Right, thank you. So, yes, I mean, unfortunately, when we come to COP or any climate change discussion, most of the time people are thinking about GHG mitigation. But however, the impact which people suffer and even animals suffer have some serious health-related issues. So we already heard that we are in a hot country, but when you are working in a hot country in front of a furnace, it's even hotter. When you have to go for maintenance to the apex of the plant, it's up to 80 degrees hot.
Yes.
So we are no longer, for many, many decades, we are not talking about when the temperatures will rise. In our environment, it's already significantly higher, and we have learned many ways on how to adapt to it.
Okay.
One of the ways is through research and development, which we as an aluminum industry do through industry bodies like IAI.
Yep.
So we carried out through IAI a research on adaptation. Now, let me give you an example of what kind of things we find which are health related. In south of Canada, there is an animal, whitefoot mouse, and because of the annual average temperature increase, they migrated towards north. And as a result, what happened? Its favorite parasites has now creating a lot of Lyme disease. And everyone in the south of Canada, north of America are experiencing that. So it's not just about rising temperatures, which are more about infrastructural related issues. There's a lot of heat related issues. So what do? We carried out another study using University of Florida. We carried out in all the smelters in the GCZ a research paper. And we were quite surprised that one of the very, very early telltale signs, if people are entering into heat-related conditions, is that the cognitive issues starts going wrong. So if you have an operator who's simply going to the meter and saying 2 plus 5 plus 7, that's where you start seeing errors being taking place.
Wow.
How do we address this? It's by awareness. It's by educating your personnel that they can self-trigger and take a bit of a rest,
Yeah.
so they don't have to enter into extreme heat illnesses, that it's a recordable or even a lost time incident. So by training the people, we try and adapt it. But now to do this, as you mentioned, how can other people learn from it? We are truly and properly in the adaptation phase.
Yeah.
And if people don't take care of it, then as Kathy mentioned, there could be a real consequence, real fatalities.
Sure.
Because people don't understand, they can't tell their first telltale signs that they are entering into that kind of situation.
Sure.
So we can, and as an aluminium body, through IAI, we have these research papers, we can distribute to people, we can educate people, but it is on self to understand and not think of climate change only in terms of mitigation or rising sea levels,
Yes.
but real health-related consequences.
Well, I want to build on that, because I think what Kathy was talking about, I think there's an acknowledgement now that climate and equity are inextricably linked, that you can't do one without the other. And so when you think about what Salman has talked about, you know, the cognitive ability being impacted, reaching out across industry to look for solutions. I think, you know, in many ways, Kathy, you have an opportunity here to dramatically change the way that we approach this issue. So how do you approach it, and what do you think we can do by reaching out to these different organizations and thinking differently about, you know, how to ultimately address the issue of gender equity with climate?
I see we have 27 minutes left, so you don't mind if I take all those
Yeah, go
minutes,
ahead.
do you?
As much as-
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? You can. Okay.
Yeah, we can.
So let me start by saying it's not just a health impact, it's an economic impact. And so when you look at the United States in 2020, the impact of one dimension of heat alone in worker productivity loss was $100 billion as a baseline in 2020, in an invisible loss. And that's not business interruption, that's not physical harm to infrastructure, that's not healthcare, that's just that's pure workers slowing down, making mistakes, and feeling tired, and all of that adds up to $100 billion. If you work in New Delhi, every single day you work outside, a quarter of your income is evaporating to heat. So this has huge impacts. And if Munich Re and Swiss Re put out every year, this is what climate cost us in losses. And usually, I think that last year the number was 267 billion. Just imagine, this one aspect of extreme heat is not included in that. And the key thing is that 18% of that loss is disproportionately borne by Black and Hispanic workers in the US and in India and other South Asian countries by women.
Yeah.
Now to your question. We have a rethink, which when you think about workers, and this is something really important for employers, if you think that your workers are air conditioned or cooled sufficiently, however that cooling comes during the day in the factory or wherever they are, if they are not cool enough to sleep and rest at night, that is the most important thing. And we get hung up on the high temperature. High temperature, it's sensational. It's 141 Fahrenheit or 52 C. The most important temperature we need to be tracking is the highs of the nighttime, because your employees are coming to work tired and exhausted, and they are not rested, and they're making mistakes, and they're slowing down. And whether they are business office workers or they are outside, they are making mistakes, and they are getting hurt. And this also hurts them and their families.
Well, I think that's the bigger issue here is, you know, each one of us talk about the collective human impact that we're having. This idea of mistakes being made, of not just the financial impact, but the human impact a lot of that means that, to Liz's point, and I want to hear more about this, when we were talking about de-risking, when we're talking about really making bold changes that you can impact people's lives, there's a piece here we just heard on the stage. It's the cumulative impact. When you think about climate change, as you raise that temperature, you're eroding that cognitive ability. So how do you approach it from a de-risking standpoint?
That's a great question. And I think, Kathy, one thing to add, mental health outcomes in extreme heat scenarios are really significant. And there's a report recently that hospital admissions increased by 7% during extreme heat, driven by anxiety, general mental health, and well-being. And so this is a critical issue, and it is a hidden cost for employers because it's not tracked economically, but it has an economic impact. Every single degree above 25 degrees Celsius, human productivity goes down by 1%. So every time that we tick up, we're just continually eroding our ability to produce and contribute. And when you get above that 35-degree threshold, you're basically wiping out 1/4 of human productivity.
Wow.
Not only that, but these heat waves are becoming more frequent. The heat wave that occurred in the southwest U.S. and northern Mexico this summer, where Phoenix, Arizona had more than 30 days of temperatures above 115 degrees Fahrenheit, which is, I think, about 44 degrees Celsius. Yeah. 30 days consecutively above that level, and more than 1,000 deaths likely related to that heat wave across the region. In previous years, our models said that type of event was about once every 250 years. So once every 250 years, this event would occur. Under current climate conditions, we now think that those events are about one every 15 years. Wow. It is our new normal that these heat waves are going to occur, and it will require employers and risk takers to be thinking about how do I take that data and embed it into my decision making. And then to your question, what are the solutions that we can bring to the table? And I think one of the key things that we always talk to our clients about is start with your exposure and your data and understand where you have employees, where they live, where you have supply chain risk, where that supply chain is located, and overlay that information with really good climate data. And as you build these layers of information, where do people live? Socioeconomic conditions about your employees, ethnic information, gender information. We know and can start to tell in greater detail exactly what the impact, the loss impact will be when you take all of that into account and overlay climate data. Yeah. And once you understand what that impact is to your business, then we can start designing solutions around your health package, your talent strategy, different types of financial instruments that we can put together to actually create financial relief when these events start to affect your business.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick addition to that, specific solutions. There's an immense evidence base for how to reduce the risks and the impacts. And I'll talk about women because that's our specialty in our organization. But the first thing is understanding what they are and then finding what those solutions are. And many of them are about understanding the difference between the data you have between men and women, and also understanding the daily lives and the impacts physiologically to women. And so financial solutions, solutions about when people work. One of the impacts we see in India is that women in the informal sector have to go home and take care of their kids. And the men are able to work a shift that's been pushed to later because it's cooler, and the women cannot. So they're losing an entire shift of income, and that has huge ramifications. And so think about how that shift, make up for that shift, change that. And so there's one example.
Well, and I want to build on that because if one of the big findings that you're seeing emerging out of COP is that we need to have women at every level of authority in the world. So that means from the very highest levels in terms of policy and business all the way down to the grassroots level.
Hear, hear.
I agree. What's interesting though is that if you had that diversity, would you change the schedules? If you understood, you remove the stratifications. as you have that diversity, because it really becomes a competitive advantage. And so what I want to do is pause here for a second. Each of these four people has laid out the need for better data. They've talked about the way that it informs what they do. But what's interesting is the overlaps, the implications. So I want to talk to Antonio about this. You have a business that is not just about cooling. It's about the human interaction when they come together. And so the urban planning side of this is important, because these buildings that exist really only exist to have people in them. And these cities that we're building have to be more dynamic and more resilient and more equitable. So where do you see this going from an innovation standpoint? How is Tabreed looking at this?
Our communities should be more resilient, especially in the context of climate change and rising temperatures. So when we design a building, when we design a city, when we try to refurbish existing buildings, we should always take into account that the context we are living now is very different from the ones we knew 20, 50 years ago when we were designing different things. So, as I said, technology is important because the existing technology can be part of the solution, and district cooling can be the part of this solution with increased energy efficiency and sustainability. But we need to integrate more elements. Innovation is one of the key factors that can contribute to research new solutions, to improve the existing solutions. And what we are doing and what we have showcased also here in UAE is that through the use of district energy, you can easily integrate local existing renewable energies into your system that you will not be able to access if each one goes its own way. I make an example. You have a nice island in Abu Dhabi, Saadiyat Island. You have very beautiful landscape. And of course, you don't want to ruin also the landscape. You need to think about something that is not visible, something that is not perturbating the environment and the species that are living in that environment. So, for example, all district cooling infrastructure is hidden underground. You don't see it, but it's bringing the need that is for hospitals. For example, you have Cleveland Clinic in Abu Dhabi. It's the biggest hospital. And of course, they need reliable and sustainable cooling for their needs. And on top of it, we can add solar energy because we have abundant solar energy in this country. And we can couple it directly with district cooling. So this is where innovation is coming. Coupling, even commercially viable technology today, but we're not taught to be together because we were not facing that challenges that we are facing today.
What Antonio is doing to look more holistically at what the needs are from a healthcare standpoint, the way that Kathy is approaching this from a gender equity standpoint, you're working with trade organizations, you're working with other people in your industry, and you're also finding things that are applicable to other industries. So how do you approach this part of your job in ESG? Because a part of that governance is transparency and working beyond your organizational lines.
So first of all, through these trade organizations, we share the data across. Aluminum industry has been in operation for many, many decades. So there's a lot of data. As I already explained, that we are already in a hot country and then working in hot environments. So the data that we have collected and utilized to take care of our people can be shared across all the people. We don't need to keep reinventing the wheel. It's already been invented. Now, let me give you an example. What we have found that by making people more educated about taking care of their health, we have been reducing heat-related illnesses. For example, in the last decade, we had zero heat-related illness, even though we have a 24/7 operation.
Okay.
What we are doing now, we're using technology and we are coding that into wearable devices. This is now the second year that we have the wearable devices where we are allowing our people who've been educated in this field for many, many years to see and record if the devices react in the same way as their education tells. And then we are fine-tuning them. Something like this, when we have developed the data and it's encoded into these devices, even if you're not fully aware, let's say if you have a lot of contractors coming in for a construction only for 6 months,
Sure.
you can allow them to wear these devices and they will buzz them if the device, which is mimicking the knowledge which people have gained over decades, to go and take a rest. Now, let's say the person doesn't take it, it can even inform the supervisor that this person or this team needs rest.
Oh, wow.
So the first thing is education, learning how the early signs are and mitigating it. And this could be applied then beyond the aluminum industry, beyond the industry, to everyone who's interested in this topic.
So that's fascinating. You know, think about it, Kathy, from your standpoint. If these women in India had a device like this, if you were able to commercialize and offer that to people, you know, that's collaborative economics, right? That's really enabling, you know, so we can make better decisions. So how do you reach out to different organizations to think differently maybe about what their technologies are or their practices are, because you need really everybody to be engaged in this?
We're testing the devices on our communities that we're working with. So we are doing just that.
I did not know that. Okay.
Well, yeah, because, well,
that's fascinating.
yeah, we haven't really announced it, and we will, but that's exactly where we're headed, because we need better triggers for risk transfer devices that are more calibrated to the human experience. And we don't need, if we know what the temperature is at the airport, that's not very helpful to know that somebody's body is breaking down and their organs are shutting down.
Yeah.
So if we have a device that tells us this is the threshold where this person can no longer operate productively and it's not safe, it also helps us understand the remarkable differences of the temperatures in one city or in one community because of where somebody is, or the amount of tree cover, or the architecture and all that sort of stuff. So integrating approaches, you're right. That's what we're going to do.
Well, I mean, what's cool about that is you're also opening up the sample population to different behaviors. So when you take that into a more human environment, people might behave differently versus an arid environment, right? So you get this larger sample size, and you also get a larger behavioral size. You know, how people do live their lives.
And the other piece is a forecast-based product, not a product based on when it happens. It's happening, but if we have such great forecasting, which we do, why wouldn't we pay on the forecast? So the women and participants would get paid when the forecast comes, and that lets them make all sorts of decisions in advance with their insurance payouts, which means better, healthier food choices for their kids, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, and by the way, this is something that has been done for years in the crop and ag space, like weather-based derivatives where you can pay out insurance recovery based on a forecast temperature or humidity or drought index. We're just taking that product that already exists and applying it to a human outcome that has a tangible and economic benefit to employers that hasn't been accounted to for so far. So it's a great example of how, if you have the right data and you have the right people at the table to think through holistically the exposure, the risk, the impact, and then the solution, you can come, with some really great innovative stuff. I think parametric, which is what that is.
We forgot to talk about parametrics.
That is what that is, essentially.
It is parametric.
A parametric insurance product is something that pays out based on some sort of trigger, like temperature or amount of rainfall, that is independent of an individual person or property demonstrating loss. So most of the insurance that you all buy likely is indemnity-based, which means you have to have someone come out and prove that you had a loss, that you experienced a loss before your insurance policy pays out. A parametric trigger gives you a payout immediately once the agreed upon threshold is realized, which means faster payout, less expense because you don't need to pay claims adjusters to go out and actually validate that the loss occurred. And it can cover types of loss and economic impact that's not typically covered by an insurance policy. So it can help you quickly recover and get money to individuals, to employees, to communities where you might not have an insurance product that's available. We're seeing a significant increase in interest and take up in parametric design for things like employee resilience. So if you have an organization where people are exposed to extreme heat or humidity, we can design resiliency parametric indexes that you can use to pay your employees to stay home, or pay them to recover, or pay them to help offset the costs of increased childcare or increased cooling that they may face. It doesn't matter what they're doing. It's a benefit that the individual can choose to spend in a way that will be most impactful for them. And as an employer, you're getting the benefit of having a more productive and healthy workforce that can, continue to contribute the way that you need them to.
That's exactly my point. So we started this conversation, right, as Antonio kind of teed it up in terms of the communal way that they approach cooling. And then, Salman spoke about the way that they've introduced this technology and discipline. It's both the right thing to do from a human perspective, but it's also the smart thing to do from a business perspective. So I want to pause here and talk to the audience. We did not plan this. We were not that amazing to pull these people because of the interconnectivity across the board. This happened because of the conversations that we had. And in overlapping and talking about our experiences, we found an enormous amount of interconnectivity. So I'm going to pose one last question as we start to wrap up. What's missing? What else do you need to drive this forward? Because I think I want to start with Salman, because you have a role here from a sustainability and an ESG standpoint to really think differently and apply a lot of the business practices out into the greater world. So what do you wish you could have more of, or what other people should you think about getting involved in this issue?
So we have, as I mentioned, decades of experience. We have mitigated, we believe we have managed this issue extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
What needs to happen is education for the general public. So
Okay.
within our own fence, with our own employees, we understand the concerns, the issues, we have the data, and we can mitigate and adapt to it.
Mm-hmm.
But this needs to be shared with wider audience, and the governments and the regulators need to take notice of that
Yes.
and get implemented. Otherwise, the more vulnerable sections of the society will keep getting hammered while the knowledge is out there, while the technologies are out there. We shouldn't be, honestly, in 21st century, where this knowledge is so much well understood, is still losing people because of lack of awareness.
Yeah, Antonio, do you see that as vital, or are there other things that you would like to see, or other people that you think should be more involved?
I think we have talked about awareness, data. We are using data for also spread awareness with the way we behave. What is our behavior as a consumer? Because we are all responsible for this increasing consumption of energy that we are observing, which
Sure.
is related to climate change. But of course, education as a role and as a big role to play. But also our local authorities, governments, policymakers, everyone, and financial institutions, everyone should target the same objective, which is reducing and consuming more efficiently, and also reducing our carbon footprint.
Yeah.
If we want to have a more resilient world, and this is a common understanding of this objective.
Well, so Kathy, nobody ever comes away from these these events and says, I really loved slide 42. It really had an impact on me, right? What they remember are the stories. So how do we take this education and bring it out in a way that hits the head, the heart, and the hands and gives people, something to do?
So you said what's missing. The first thing that we need, and I could not agree more with Salman, is we need an early warning system. We need to name and categorize heat waves based on health outcomes. That technology exists. There's early evidence that shows that heat wave naming works. If you give it a face, you give it a name. I mean, you give it a name, you give it a face,
Yep.
and people pay attention. The second thing is that this phenomenal development around loss and damage, the heat solutions need to be a part of that loss and damage facility and how that money is being distributed and make sure that heat gets there.
Got it.
And then there was a third thing that escaped me.
Well,
Yes,
we'll have Liz comment, and maybe
Tell me, Liz.
you can.
No, I think education is obviously critically important. And I think that what we're seeing in the insurance space is a lack of understanding of how heat actually will affect their outcomes for profitability, like health insurers, life insurers,
Yep.
the entire kind of health medical system. They're absorbing these costs of heat impacts through life insurance policies, hospital costs, increased admissions, the impact of air pollution on absenteeism. And there isn't a tangible way to embed those costs into an underwriting or a pricing decision. What we're going to see is that change. Insurers are going to catch on to where property insurance has been for 20 years, and they're going to start embedding this information. And we're close to getting that linkage between heat and loss cost and premium impact. So individuals have to start becoming aware ahead of time. Every organization is going to be facing increasing costs because of climate change. And today, sitting here, it might be hard to see how those costs come through because the impacts of inflation on medical costs probably,
Yeah.
well, definitely far outweigh the impact of heat costs.
Yeah.
But that's because it's hidden. And if we can get that to be more precise, we're going to people will make financially driven decisions that will help to reduce the impact of heats overall. But it's just missing in how everybody prices it.
Yep. You got it?
The number one predictor of our survival of disasters is not whether we have equipment or whether we have batteries for radios. It's whether you know your neighbor. It's about your community and your social cohesion. And so one of the things we have to have is that awareness, and then also the social norm of reaching out to your neighbor, your family, et cetera, to share the information about what you should do about it, not just that it's dangerous, and that no one has to die from heat. Every death is preventable, and knowing that is powerful, and we don't have to die.
Yep. I mean, I think that the knowledge is power, and we're trying to empower people. And so the thing I want to leave everybody with is I want to thank everybody on this panel. You've now learned something from the interconnectivity here. That's what the Mubadala stage is trying to show you, is that the diversity of thought, the diversity of experience, that has an impact. So we're going to be continuing this type of combination of people from different kind of facets of an issue and really build it out. But I want to thank everybody here because it was fascinating to learn not just what you do and how you do it, but how interconnected we all are. So thank you so much.